Shall I start, or what's the? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well. Thanks all for coming. It's unnecessary to introduce. I think we already all introduced. So I'm an organic farmer. I farm in Germany. It's a family farm or family farm. This is my wife. She's a gynecologist. She works in the local hospital, and we have two boys. Our farm has a total of around 60 hectares, of which 9.5 is owned, and including our yard, and the rest we have a leasing agreement. We have also quite small fields, between 3 and 6 or 7 hectares, and spread through the area. And our soil type is it's a sandy soil, but with a percentage of loam in it, and we are around 150 up to 200 meters above sea level. Average precipitation is 700 millimeters, according to the official data, but that's our main struggle basically, because 2 years ago we had a total rainfall of a little over 400 millimeters in the whole year, which was very little, and I lost quite a big part of my crops due to the drought. And then this year we had over 1,000 millimeters, so that's a 600 millimeter difference within 2 years, within 1 year basically, and it is very difficult to put a strategy onto that. So that is it's an increasing difficulty that we are facing. We're dry land, so no irrigation, no tail drainage. We'll just have to do or use what nature brings. Then 2 mobile chicken facilities that each can have 250 chickens, and we fully self-market the eggs. So we have a few smaller and bigger shops that we deliver, and I think around 40% we sell in these 2 littles. I have one little house, like a garden house at my yard. It's all on self-service, so based on trust, basically. People go in, pay, and we leave some money for change. And then we have another small shop at the beginning of the village where it starts, where all the people pass by going to the work, and works quite well. And we sell potatoes in there, and eggs, and some soup chickens, and products from the yard basically. Then on the south side of the building, it's a big roof. There we have 250 kilowatts of solar panels, and we are just starting with some agroforestry. With the first 2 rows are planted this year. We're organically certified. We don't use any plow, not for the last 10 years now. And in process, I always call it in process too, since it is such a big learning experience towards regenerative. So most things we are discussing today are just, I do this partially on my farm. I still till quite a bit, but I try to get rid of it. I try to work my way out of it. So I think around 20-25% is no-till now, and it gets more and more every year. But I'm not fully applying it everywhere yet. So this is where we are located, and here you also see our farm with the solar panels and the chicken tractors. So we are on the height of Luxembourg, between Luxembourg and Frankfurt. In an area, there's also a lot of wine growing in the area. These are the crops I grow currently. It changes a little bit from year to year, but the winter wheat and the faba beans I grow as a polyculture together. Same story for the winter oats. Then I grow either soybeans or peas, a little bit depending on the year, and we have around 6 or 7 hectares of pumpkins or squash. Potatoes, half an hectare also for self-marketing, and either hemp, the industrial hemp for seed production, for oil, or sunflowers, also a little bit according what the market gives away, and then different winter and summer cover crops and mixtures, and then do a lot of experiments with no-till and with mixed crops, polycultures, and I try to. Yeah, we harvest the grains, and they are generally used for either they peel it, and then you can use it in mueslis, for example, or they press the oil out of it for consumption. Yeah, it's this variety that we grow. It's a low-growing variety because they can. Otherwise, you will have 3-4 meters of crop. So it's a low-growing variety that you can harvest with your combine. It's a bit of a tough job because it's very ropey, and it might block and wrap around axle or shafts and stuff. But it generally works quite well.
Like you would sorghum or sesame.
Exactly. Yeah, just the tops.
Or as much of a
As high as possible, as low as necessary. Yeah, that's to avoid this wrapping. Yeah, and then I generally try to change from summer crops to a winter crop and sometimes 2 times a winter crop or 2 times a summer crop. But I try to try to surprise nature basically, also to suppress weeds and yeah. So with the general question, I think for all of us is always where to start, because in the regenerative scene there's a lot of theoretical knowledge, but not always so much practical knowledge, and that's a bit of a problem. So I really try to put things into practice. I've made a lot of mistakes. One of my mistakes where I started with, I got an understanding of Elaine Ingham, and I followed her course, and according to Elaine Ingham, biology is everything, and biology is going to solve all your problems, and I think it is a very important part. It's not by incident that it is the biggest bubble basically in this triangle, but then afterwards I figured that it didn't do what I expected it to do, because the physical conditions of the soil were not right for the biology to survive, and the physical and the chemical, they influence each other, and so I think it's a very important a picture, this one, that you have to implement all the 3 standards basically, and combine them to get towards no-till. Some people say you have to deserve to get to no-till, and I think it is true. You have to work your way towards it. And here you see how I started, where I basically did my normal crops the normal way, or the standard way, and how I start to get into the no-till. Just try 6 meters, 1 circle with the machine, see what happens, how it works, problems. I really started small and tried year after year, and now I start expanding. Soil cover, one of the principles. I think it's a very, very important principle, and the minimum disturbance, mechanically as well as chemically, to regulate your soil temperature and to avoid the impact of rain. Because the impact of a raindrop on your soil mechanically can be really, really heavy. And to avoid moisture loss by evaporation, wind protection, suppressing of weeds. Well, I think we all know the kind of basics. So you try to basically mimic nature, where the nature will put a cover of leaves, for example. You try to mimic it and put it into a kind of practical way in farming. And you can either do it with in this, what you see here, with a dead mulch, but well, ideally it would even be a live mulch, so like a small crop of plantain, for example, or white clover. So you continue pumping sugars in your system, but these are just things that need to be developed. Yeah, this was, I will come back to this, but this is where I was. This was last year, a cereal rye crop that I crimp rolled and then put soybeans in.
But you rolled first?
Yeah, I do it all at once. I have the crimp roller in the front and then plant in the back. I'm alone, so it has to be efficient. Yeah. But we will get back to this, yeah. And then I think it is very important, this system, because you get a very narrow window where you basically do not use photosynthetic capacity, because if you look in our area in the Netherlands, for example, we are around 50 degrees north, and In the winter, of course, we have a short day length, which you can see here. This is the day length. So we only have 7 or 8 hours and not so much sun. So that's where we have around 20 watts per square meter per hour of sunlight that we get in from nature, basically. And in the summer times you have stronger sun and you have longer days, and that's where we get around 200 watts of sunlight per square meter per hour. Doesn't really sound like a lot, but so in average we have around 110 watts per hour per square meter, but that's 1100 kilowatts per hour per hectare. It's enormous amount of energy, and you can only harvest this when you have a leaf there that is able to take it up. So I think it is it's a very strong point, because it's something that a lot of farmers are not so conscious about. It's free energy. It's a lot of energy, and as a farmer, I think we should think way more into harvest as much sunlight and free energy basically as possible, because if you harvest this with a plant, well, you will via the excretion, I think you exudates of the plant, you will feed your biology, then that will make all the minerals available, but you also pump these stable carbon into your soil, and yeah, you will, if you feed the biology, it will aggregate the soil, so you will get a better gas exchange. Well, the atmosphere contains 78% of nitrogen, so that's how you get your nitrogen into the system. And if you see 79% or even more of the plant is based or is made from carbon, oxygen, water, etc., nitrogen, and it's all free there. So I think the more sunlight you can harvest, the more free energy you can get. Then you already have your most plant parts there.
That's
yeah.
part of the discussion, like when you're talking about this kind of conversations, is, well, stuff doesn't come from thin air, but it actually does. It comes from the sun, and it comes from the actual
Yes, exactly. And I think as a farmer, why would you buy nitrogen that has been produced with a lot of ancient sunlight, basically, if it's already there? Just catch it, you know. But that's basically the message here. Yeah. Well, the CN ratios in this system are very important. So the more strawy or the more lignin you get, the higher the CN ratio. And here you see a hairy vetch crop, for example. It has a low CN ratio. And then you can play with CN ratios according to how you mix your cover crop. Yeah, that's, I think, about it. Nutrients question, this is from Rick Clark. He has made tests where he is taking a square meter of cover crop out and send it to a lab and see what it contains. And he does this at different stages, growing stages. And then he also made, this is one, two. Here he made it, he did the same test, but then 2 weeks or 2 months after it was terminated with a crimper roller. And then if you see how he uses this as an example to see or how much has taken by the soil already, so how it will release its nutrients.
Maybe I'll give just a small information. Rick Clark, para quem não sabe, muitos de vocês já sabem, mas é um agricultor americano que faz, penso que são 2.000 hectares neste momento em Sementeira Directa, biológico, e ele gosta muito de pensar como é que os cover crops vão sequestrar nutrientes e como é que quando se incorporam em diferentes alturas, ou quando se manda abaixo, por exemplo, neste caso o centeio, em alturas diferentes, vai dar de volta ao solo nutrientes diferentes, que é para estudar.
Isto que explica aqui é aqueles nutrientes que tínhamos nos 28 dias ou 28 qualquer coisa, não é?
O equivalente
é ganhar mais, portanto a diferença ali foi para o solo.
Exatamente.
Okay.
So it's clear? Yeah, okay. Yeah, my English is not perfect. So, but he has done the same with Balanza fixation clover. Also took a square meter, sent it to a lab at different stages, And what is very interesting, and that's why I wanted to show this, that here on the last two, where is it? There. Here in the second, it's only a difference of 4 days here, June 8th and June 4th. And if you see in this last 4 days how much more nutrients he is getting in his crop, only in 4 days. So I think it is very important in this system as well, in the no-till and direct drilling system, that you really let your cover crop get into, a few days can make a big difference in nutrient sequestration, basically.
Isto na verdade, desculpa, na verdade não é, isto é o que a planta tira do solo.
Certo? Mas ele estava a medir a biomassa. A biomassa, quando estava viva, tinha aqueles nutrientes.
Isso.
Depois de seca já não os tinha, ou libertou os produtos quando morreu, ou foram todos estudados para as plantas.
Ou vai, por exemplo, o azoto vai embora por
Depois, mas o resto dos nutrientes não foram, não tem lá, está não.
Exato. Ela sobe e depois desce, quando começa a secar, depois começa a perder nutrientes. Isto é, this is still green, right?
Yeah, this is still green living mark.
Can you put
The rye?
Before the slide is the English slide.
Yeah, a slide, yeah.
Our question is the difference between that rye and the 28 days.
Yeah.
The difference between both of the lines is where the nutrients, the difference of the nutrients, they go into the roots.
Where did they go?
Where did they go?
Well, I think especially when we talk about the nitrogen, you will probably lose some in the air. It might gas off. Maybe not all of it, but a little bit, definitely. But I think the potassium and the phosphorus and sulfur, etc., I'm quite sure it will go into the soil. The biology will uptake it, the plants will uptake it.
And most important, it's when the point where you crash the rye, it's very important because if you crash it quando está na parte ainda que não cria o líquido por dentro, na parte da floração, that's when you get, it's the most interesting part because it's when she's releasing the plant the big amount of exudates. So
yeah.
it's when you can feed the soil in terms when you can feed the microbiology in the soil. That's why Rick Clark likes so much of rye and also of millet. It's a crop that does the two things. Rick Clark always normally call it like an atomic bomb because it's a very good crop for managing other weeds, but also it's one of the most important crops for feeding the soil.
Yeah. Well, the crop will, as bigger as it gets, the more leaf surface it will create. So the more sun it will harvest, and that's why it is such an explosive system, basically. And that's why you gain.
The 10 inches on a rye makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, well, and that's especially why you see it here. That even if you look at the biomass, it almost doubles within 4 days because it has so much energy that it can capture and produce. That it, the more leaf, I don't know how you call it. The graphics, it goes steep. Yeah, basically on the end. Exponential, exactly. Yeah. So yeah. And here you see how even not only the bacteria but also the crop. This was these were roots from pumpkins under a mat of hairy vetch. This was last year. And then if you remove the mat of hairy vetch, you literally see the roots also coming up and get the nutrients. So it's I think it's a very powerful system.
Do you see the pumpkins in your context?
Almost all of these crops that you crimp a roll and then plant in our area, it's generally the first week, either the first week of June or the last 2 weeks of May in this 3-week period. It's almost always, yeah. So here, well, the cover crop, the weed suppression capacity can be enormous. So last year, I took this picture, it was in February, it was hairy vetch. And as you see, you could hardly see the hairy vetch, it was very weedy. And this is the same field on the 2nd of May. And it will just overgrow it, and by the allelopathic effects, etc., it will really suppress weeds, and also it will uptake the free nitrogen, nitrates that normally the weeds really like. So it is a very powerful tool, the cover crops as well, to get rid of the weeds. Yeah, so the crimper rolling part, I think, well, I didn't really know what kind of people I was expecting, so I just started with the basics. It's an invention from the Rodale Institute. That's this book. He is from Jeff Moyer. He was the inventor. They invented it basically by coincidence, because they tried to plant into a cover crop, and then where they turned the headlands, basically they figured out, hey, the cover crop is killing, and this is very nice mat. So they tried to find a way to technically mimic that, and that's how they by coincidence figured it out. So they came on the end with a chevron profile. It's this V-shaped profile. And they made it like this because then you have most pressure on a very small part of the cams, or how do you call it, the strips. And it also avoids vibrating of the machine, because it will, if you would have made them all straight, it would start vibrating, and you will feel it in the tractors, and your bearings will not last as long. My speed? Yeah, well, you can drive up to as fast as you can.
You regulate it by your own planter or seeder, right?
Generally, yes, you can drive as fast as you like, but I think you should give it maybe a little bit of. It depends also on the kind of cover crop that you roll. So if you have rye, then you might consider to slow down a little bit. Otherwise, it might maybe kind of start flying on top of it. But for vetch, it might be worth to maybe drive a little bit quicker, because also by the speed you will kill and knock the cover crop a little bit. But this is just a single drum, as you will see in the next picture.
In this photo, do you are rolling in that way or in the?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, you can put it in the front of the tractor and in the rear.
Como ele está a semear e a rolar ao mesmo tempo, a linha bate certo. Normalmente quando rolas primeiro e depois então entras com o semeador, depois aí já tens o problema do pinching e assim. Mas como ele está a fazer tudo na mesma linha, é indiferente se faz curva, se não faz curva, porque tudo acompanha.
Saying it's important to have the line that was rolled, the same line you see.
Yeah.
My question was not. I know that the input that is in the front must be the same size in the rear, so everything it's okay. My question is about the angle here.
Yeah. If it is pointing forwards or backwards.
If there was a difference on working in one way or another way.
No, it's not.
The difference of broken the leaf.
No, it doesn't make any difference. Yeah. It's because I made my own crimper roller. I was a little bit short in money, so I had to make my own. I made a drum basically, and then you can fill this one with water as well. And I kind of made the chevron profile into steps, as you can see here. So this is 50 centimeters, this one is 50 centimeters, and this one is 1 meter. So you theoretically will have the total weight of the whole drum, or including frame, on just always on 1 meter, because the outside ones are lined up, this one and that one is lined up, and then the middle one is 1 meter. And that also works really fine. I have no issues with vibrating or something like this. It just works really well.
Aqui, até foi o Dolf que me explicou isto a primeira vez quando eu visitei, que é, não sei se ficou claro, mas é muito importante que não seja completamente direito, porque aí há muita área e não faz tanta pressão. Portanto, tem que ser menos área por cada volta da roda. E que vibra, e outra coisa é que vibra mais.
Yeah.
Diz que assim, ou se faz em tipo de fornadura, ou então faz assim desencontrado.
Yeah.
Isto foi feito por ele.
Isto é igual ao fiar.
Não sei se...
Não, é diferente. A fialha é partições todas iguais.
Eu tenho que fiar, são todas iguais, não é assim. E é muito leve o fiar.
Não dá para pôr água. Dá para pôr água.
Não, a fialha eles têm adaptado para meter pesos. Só que aquilo torna-se um bocado estúpido. Mas acho que com mais umas pontas de solda às pontas e fazendo o buraco no torneiro, acho que dá para começares a incorporar água naquilo. Porque normalmente a falha é de ser muito leve. Eu, por exemplo, consigo chegar about 10 km an hour, 12 at the most when I'm rolling with the straight knife. And yeah, you start wobbling too much, and then you'd have to add weight to knock it down and stuff.
But if you do it like this in steps, it's no problem. You can drive 40 kilometers if you like to. You can just speed up as far as you like.
Yeah.
But what I experienced with this system, and why you preferably would use the chevron profile, is that you will have some points of overlap here. I just let them overlap 1 centimeter, I think. If you are planting into a cover crop, and then, for example, there are situations that soybeans, for example, is a good example. You can plant soybeans into a standing rye crop when it is at boot stage, and then crimper roll it like 40 days or 30, 40, 50 days afterwards. And then if you have a rowing space that will just be at the overlap, you might get some damage. And if the row would be just in the middle, for example, you will not get so much damage. So that's one of the disadvantages that I have experienced of this system. It's not a big issue because normally you can offset a little bit with the tractor or with the GPS or whatever system you have. But that is something you might have to keep an eye on or put in mind. And I am able to fill this one with water, and then it will be around 1,200 kilograms in total. And the rule of thumb, what I've heard from the Rolo Institute, is that you need around 300 kilogram per meter width. So if you have a 3 meter machine, then you need a minimum weight of 900 kilogram, and heavier is not gonna do a lot of harm. But that's a bit of a minimum standard. And I think it also depends a little bit on the sharpness of the well, we call it knives, but it's actually not a knife. They're all dull, which you can see here. So it's just a flat iron, and here you see how you can fill it with water. And
não devem ser afiadas, no fundo que eu estou a dizer, muitas vezes vêm-se afiadas, mas se é afiada pica, e não é para picar, é para dobrar. Esta é afiada, esta é que tem que se usar, que é para limpar.
Está muita pedra para ali.
Pois,
yeah, because if you make them sharp, it will start cutting, and if you cut it, it will you increase the possibility that you will get regrowth. The thing is that you
é cortar a seiva da planta, é dobrar.
yeah.
Isso é que é crinco, quer dizer vinco.
Yeah, I have a nice picture of it afterwards. So, and then over time I kind of found out that sometimes if you have to drive offset a little bit with your planter, which I will explain afterwards, that you miss a little strip that you do not crimp. So that's why I made a few tools on it, on the sides, a small arm that just pull it in basically. Since we are limited, we have a width limit that we are allowed to drive over the roads. We are not allowed to extend 3 meters. So that's why I made this one. But I will change it this year a little bit. The red line in the front you will see. It's just an example, because if you drive with this into a mixed cover crop that also contains vetch or oats or peas or whatever, it will start wrapping and building up. So I think I'm gonna change the shape a little bit. And also I will, this red line over here, I will make 8 of them in a way that I can move them left and right a little bit, according to what kind of rowing distance I have, as a kind of comb. So I will even more put the rye in this situation lengthwise, because sometimes it goes a little bit on top of each other, and then you will also create cutting, which might increase regrowth, but also it will help you to plant to get a better seeding quality. And also I'd like to add some covers here, so that you don't get wrapping around your bearing. But
So
it's
basically you're gonna put like row cleaners, or just
yeah, you would.
openers, just to like.
Not really openers. I was just thinking about a bar of 2 centimeters, for example, just to comb it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not really an opening system, but just to make it more in line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here you see the working of this little tool that I've added. This was in a cereal rye crop. And then you see as well that it pushes it a little bit inwards and it will straight away start cutting. So that's why I find it so important that everything is lengthwise. Yeah, so here you see really in detail the effect of the crimping and why it is important that you have the dull knives, not the cutting knives. Well, in my experience, the optimal timing for the killing is after bloom. The common mistake I've made several times, I was just so curious and willing to start it and to test it, and that I went in too early. And I was forced last year, due to extreme wet conditions, to just wait. It was just too wet to plant, so I waited, and I planted, I think, 3 or maybe even 4 weeks later than I would have done normally. And I had a much better killing rate. It was just much better. I was really a bit afraid that we would have regrowth because it was start forming seeds already, but it's been the best result so far, and I have hardly any volunteer rye now in the next crop next year. So patience is a very important thing in this system.
Is it okay for you? Are you comfortable by terminating your cover crop in May, considering your cash crop that you're going to do after? Is that comfortable this month for you?
Yeah, that depends every year.
Are you then able to harvest in good conditions the cash crop that you're going to do?
Yeah, normally, yes. For soybeans, what I experience is that if you plant 3 weeks later, for example, or 2 weeks later, it doesn't mean that you're going to harvest 2 or 3 weeks later. You will just get a more explosive growing period, which can really be helpful also as a weed suppressing mechanism. So maybe a planting of 2 or 3 weeks later will maybe only cause a delay of 1 week on the end harvesting time.
And using varieties with more shorter, so you can reaper sooner.
Yeah, might help as well. This year I will gonna do a lot of test strips with different varieties of soybeans, for example, and also different varieties of lupins and different varieties of peas, and I'm going to do some testing with the varieties. So far I've only been focusing on the system to get it to work technically and to figure out how it works, and now I will also really start to do fine-tuning when it comes to varieties, because I think varieties are going to make a big difference as well. That's what I did with a rye as well. I use a type of rye that is actually bred for silage. We have these organic how do you call it? These digesters in Germany quite a lot, where they grow crops and they put it in the digester to produce gas, and on the end to produce electrical power. And this rye variety is basically created for this, so that they have lots of biomass. And I use it for crimper rolling, because it gives me up to 30 tons per hectare of biomass.
What's the variety name?
Protector, I think it is called. Yeah.
That should be very interesting. In Portugal, we have a very it's hybrid, or it's hard to get. For me still. I don't know if anyone in this room had already found out, but for me, finding a rye that really moves or accelerates during the winter, and I tried out even with the Miguel from Agropet, Miguel Lopes Carvalho. We tried several varieties.
Yeah.
It's very hard in Portugal to. I think that will be a very good effort if Paul or Andres, you want to look
Are you getting them from
Implementação?
Yeah, I think you can get them from Camena. Yeah.
What I'm using, it's a Portuguese variety of Trigo.
Yeah.
From the south of Portugal, Bonda Doce. It really accelerates, and I can get the good stage in the end of March, April, which is good for me, because what I'm observing, and it is compatible to what you are saying, with a friend of ours, the Ademir Caligari, is in our context, it's very important to go earlier and to work with short cycle varieties.
Yeah.
Because we have high temperatures, or very low
Yeah.
temperatures and then high temperatures.
Yeah.
So the cycles are like quite short. So
Yeah.
what we are like observing, especially me and Andre, really like Ademir for a long time and have a very good relationship with him. He's the guy of the cover crop.
He was at my farm. Yeah, I know him. Yeah.
We are always testing and making experience, and at least in my context.
Yeah.
I need really to find out those short.
Yeah, but it is a very good point.
Biomass in a very short period.
Yeah, because that's why I did some testing with different types of rye or different varieties as well, and I see quite a big difference.
I was asking if you were comfortable then with your cover crop, with your cash crop. Would you?
Yeah, but this in my conditions. Well, we are just, since we are up north, we are just later in general. This variety for me is the quickest growing variety, and it's the same principle but just in our context. But yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
This is your cover crop, 2 summer crops.
Yes.
And 2 winter crops. Do you have enough?
We will come back. Yeah.
My question comes from because in all the classes that I have in here, we are always talking about more plants we put in the mix, it's better.
Yeah.
It's to understand why in your context you only use rye. That it must be a reason, or just to understand why don't you have more varieties in your context?
Yeah. Well, I showed this graph a few pages or a few slides ago with the CN ratio. It depends a little bit on what you wanna do. So if in this situation it is rye because I'm going to plant a legume in it, so I create a very high carbon rich environment that has drained all the nitrogen out of the soil, and I'm going to put a legume in there to force it basically to produce nitrogen. And on the end apparently it will help to make more pods, and it's supposed to help getting higher yields. But I do sometimes see a bit of a nitrogen drag, especially in the beginning. The plants do struggle a little bit more. But I try to get an environment with hardly any nitrogen and a lot of carbon when I put a legume in it. And if you have a crop, a cash crop that has a higher need for nitrogen, then you do either make a mix with legume, a grass and a legume, for example, or you go, well, I wouldn't recommend to go fully into legumes. You should always have a bit of a carbon source to bound the nitrogen, and because if you have a 100% nitrogen fixation crop, a legume, you pump so much nitrogen in the soil that it will compact, because your soil has a natural CN ratio. I believe it's around 1 to 15, is that correct? Yeah. And if you put only nitrogen in there, then the bacteria, they consume so much nitrogen, and a bacteria, for example, has a CN ratio around 1 to 5, so 1 nitrogen to 5 carbon. So if it takes a nitrogen, it has to take 5 carbons. So if you only feed them with nitrogen, they will take your carbon out of the soil. So you deplete yourself of carbon, and you will compact you make your soil very compact. And if you put a lot of carbon in it, you get it basically the other way around, with the risk, of course, that you might get a nitrogen lockup. Yeah. But there are big differences between a lot of carbon on top of the soil or when you mix it into the soil, and the size of the parts of the carbon. There's a lot of
very interesting and important point. For people that do a lot of legumes,
yeah.
I really observe, I was commenting to you, when you work with a lot of legumes, you get compactation.
Yeah.
And if you are working with no-till, this is a very important point.
Because the compaction issues that we have in agriculture in general, it's not only the heavy machinery and the bad tire pressure, etc., but it is an overuse of nitrogen that will compact your soil.
And it'll be the same as you put in chemical nitrogen onto the soil. It'll be.
Yeah. So even if it is an organic nitrogen source, a legume, you can still make damage if you don't use it in a proper way.
Nitrate at the end.
Yeah.
It'll have leakage. It's the same thing.
So if you pump it full with nitrogen, you will lose some carbon. It's and it makes it also, since you make your soil a little bit harder, because of the amount of nitrogen, it will also make it more difficult to plant in. But we will get into that.
Question though, if you were in conventional farming and having access to a cheap source of nitrogen, would you add a little bit for the soybeans initially or not?
Yeah, I might do so. I'm still not so sure about it because we are in a moisture environment in our context generally in the winter time, and slugs can be quite a bit of a problem. And I think it is very, very helpful if you can get a little bit of a more explosive start. Just maybe a little bit so it gets up earlier and quicker. That's also, again, why patience is so important, because in the system your soil will not warm up as quick as it does when you do till. But I will come back to that as well, because I think by using mixtures, what your point was earlier on, several different cover crops will have different colors as well when you kill them. So if you take, for example, a faba bean, or if you take a Phacelia, if you kill it, it will turn black. And I think that is something in my context. I'm trying it this year, so I have mixed a little bit of Phacelia in my cereal rye this year. I planted it with the cereal rye in the autumn, and I hope that's what I'm going to see this year, that by killing this together with the cereal rye, that the color in general will become darker of the mulch on top of the soil, and I hope this will help me to get a bit of a quicker warming up of the soil. But we will see. I haven't tried it yet.
You haven't been getting any winter kill of the Phacelia?
Not if you. That was also a bit of a test, but it depends when you plant it. If it is very developed, it will definitely winter kill. Yeah. If it is very small, it will survive.
That's why I find my mixes that where it was below the mix, the frost only did the tops, but now it's working great because now we're not getting such cold temperatures, and it's grown, and it's supposed to be a spring crop.
Yeah. No, but the more mature it is, the easier it will winter kill.
Yeah.
Here are just some examples. You can do it at a small scale, big scale. You can do it in a kind of strip till situation where you in-row crimper roll. There are crimper roll attachments that you can put on your planter bars. You can use livestock. That's of course the most profitable way always. You have systems up to 15, 20 meters wide. It's possible on every scale. That's just what I wanted to show here.
By using the animals, we have made a very interesting study that was sponsored by a fund, but it's very, very interesting comparing the roller crimper with the use of animals. With the use of animals, you really activate the microbiome cycle of the soil. It's amazing. You get the phosphorus going, the nitrogen, the potassium, the boron. We reach a speed of cycling. It's really, really amazing. If you're going to do a very important cash crop for you after, you get the seed will germinate with the soil at like maximum speed.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when you incorporate.
It's not just the manure, but also the fact that the animals step, and then you make the interface of the.
Yeah, they will push it a little bit into the soil. Yeah, definitely. The only downside with animals mechanically, I can imagine, is that it might become more difficult to plant in it, since you do not line it into the direction of your planter. So you might get more hairpinning, but biologically I think it has a big advantage, because especially when you're in the beginning of the transition and you do not have a very high biological activity, even the soil can be quite dead underneath this mulch, and it will come over time, I guess, but it's a bit of a struggle for me as well. You can do it before, after planting, the way you like it or the way your equipment allows it, and then this crimp rolling after you already have planted and established the crop. That's what I tried as well. That's what I'm trying here. So this is the cereal rye in boot stage. Especially in dry conditions, I can imagine it makes sense. So in here you see I pulled up the front row,
Yeah.
and I only plant with the rear row, but we will come back to that as well. But the conditions were really difficult this year. It kept on being wet, so this was actually too wet, but you do not always have a choice.
Sorry, one question. Why do you use the stars?
It comes, yeah. I will come back to it. So this is what I just showed was last year, but this I tried it 4 or 5 years ago, and I had better luck then. So here you see the cereal rye that is coming up in the standing rye. The disadvantage in my situation is, or in my context, is that I only have a 3-meter machine, and compared to the complete width, you have a lot of tire area, so you will basically damage already quite a lot of rye. But the advantage is that you have this rye all up, and pigeons, for example, can be an issue for us. That will take out the seeds or the for them it's like taugé, we call it. It's this sprout. They like the sprouts. So if you have the cereal rye still standing, then the pigeons have more difficulties to get to it. That's a big advantage, and you will have much more overlap in your photosynthesis. So you harvest more sunlight. So left is before rolling, and here I just passed with the roller. The beans in the beginning, they are really juicy and snappy, and then they go towards a state where the stem gets woody. And the period in between, they are really flexible and tough, and that's where you can roll it. It also works with sunflowers. You can roll sunflowers as well.
You roll it with your 3 meters roller?
Yeah. So you roll the cereal rye, including the soybeans, and the soybeans in this stage can handle it. You shouldn't wait too long, or you shouldn't be there too early, but in this stage, where it goes from this juicy, snappy stamp into the woody stamp, it's like gummy. It's rubber. It's a bit.
No fundo pode aguentar a cacetada do rolo faca quando está entre o estado que está muito suculento e pardo e o que está mais já lignificado e também pardo. E há ali um espacinho que ele
Yeah.
I was laughing because I was telling João that we are here only about 1 hour, and we have already plenty of ideas to make trials already.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah. So, but this was one of my first years I tried it, and so here you see the results, and these are not very encouraging. I went in with the roller still too early, so you see a lot of cereal rye that jumps back up, and they will of course form seeds, and then they might cause problems in the next crop. As well as it was also a bit of a dry, difficult year, so I had not enough biomass. So, but this was the crop that I planted before 40 days before I rolled it, and then I also did some trials. Here you see rows of 50 centimeters. Here I used every element, so it was around 70 centimeters. But I really start preferring the rows, because per meter of row you will have more seeds, and they have a common force. You know, they have. If you have 1 seed every 10 centimeters, it's not as strong as if you have 5 or 6 seeds, just for example, in 1 centimeter. They together have more power to press through a crust, for example, or through a crop. Yeah, well, we just mentioned the day length and the overlap of photosynthesis.
Let me ask you a question. With the soybeans, you're putting them like at 30 inches apart?
Now, well, I talk in centimeters if you don't mind.
Yeah, 75? Or
Yeah,
70?
I used to, I just redid my machine a little bit. I changed the row spaces a little bit. So my system is based on 18.75 centimeters, and then if you take out 1 row, you have 37.5. Okay. So, and that's where 37.5 is I think it's a measurement that works really well for this system. Up to 50 centimeters, I think I would go. Yeah. Well, the stage of the rye that you need to wait till blooming, and preferably till after blooming. And also an advantage if you wait a little bit till after blooming is the blossom and the pollen, they might really build up into the radiator of your tractor. If you wait a little bit, everything stays cleaner, and you will also decrease the chance of overheating of your tractor. And the pollen is really sticky, so everything just gets yellow and green, and your windscreens and everything.
I've seen some trials with working more with the triticale rather than a cereal rye because of that.
Yeah.
It leaves less pollen rather than the ryegrass. I mean the cereal rye. In that stage.
Yeah.
That,
but my experience now, and of course it's not always in every situation it might be possible, but if you just be a little bit patient, you will just overcome this problem, and you will have a better killing rate as well.
You're gonna then make available the presentation for. It's okay, no?
I don't mind. Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
então só para vou ter acesso à apresentação.
Thank you.
Yeah. But there's quite a big time frame, you know. It also depends on your weather conditions and what weather is kind of expected. So in my experience, you have a kind of time frame of around 3 weeks where you will be able to roll. So you still have some flexibility for weather conditions, etc. And then everything with a hollow stamp you will be able to crimp. So if it has a solid stamp, it is more difficult. Different cereals, you can use C4 grasses, vetch, peas, crimson clover. You can use the crimper roller combined with frost kill. That's what I do as well. You can slow down perennials. One trial I did with white clover, and it unfortunately failed because we didn't get enough rain. But I had a mat of white clover. I intercropped or direct drilled cereal rye in it. And the thought was to plant sunflowers in there, so I crimper rolled the white clover and the cereal rye and direct drilled sunflowers in there. But we had such a drought that it didn't really germinate. But the idea and the thought was to also, you will not kill white clover with your crimper roller, but you might slow it down. And you might slow it down enough to give the cash crop the opportunity to get above the white clover, and then the white clover will come again, and then you have a nice living mulch basically. That was my thought.
Which in the conventional probably a little bit of glyphosate would trick. Like
yeah, definitely. Yeah. That might have been really helpful.
But that's sleep, yeah.
But in this specific situation also, the white clover, they make these runners, I think you call them. And they take a lot of, white clover consumes a lot of moisture, and exactly in the zone where you generally plant. So in the top 3-4 centimeters, it will take a lot of moisture. And if you are in drier conditions, I would recommend not to work too much with white clover, because it can cause problems. So here, this is last year. This was the cereal rye where we had 30 tons of above biomass, above ground biomass, and so I do it all in one pass. This is how it looks like. So I'm quite a big fan of the system, because you can drive normal speeds, and it doesn't really delay you in when you are working, and you can do this on small scale, really large scale. It's quite a neat system.
Here you are seeing?
This is soybeans. And then you see as well, originally the planter, it's only on 2 wheels. I welded some stubbles on it, so I made I made 2 extra wheels, because in different conditions, I think you should always try to avoid soil compaction. So now you have the weight spread a little bit over your different.
Your soybeans will be how much distance?
37.5. Yeah, yeah. So these are the results. So the 28th of June is the top left, and then yeah, well, you can see the dates, but you see it develop. This was basically the first time that I had a a mentionable result. I've done it several years now, and so far it was always unsuccessful, mostly due to difficult weather conditions, and or not planting in the right conditions. But this year was still not perfect. There's still a lot to gain, but it's I had the ability to harvest at least. And you see, well, it's still there are some ducks here. That's one of the problems that I'm really struggling with. But other than that, it is really fairly clean. Yeah, it's acceptable, I think.
Don't you think it's why you were talking in the beginning that you change the rotation, because that weeds that are there, maybe next year it will be a problem. So you when you see that you had some problem like that, you see next year I need to change our winter crop.
Yeah, so that's why I try to change, but that's why I was so interested in how you deal with grasses, for example, because it's a perennial weed and it is a very tough one with enormous taproots. And if you take the taproot out and you snap it, you will have 2 plants the next year. It is a very tough plant, and I think it's a combination of maybe a chemical imbalance combined with maybe physical problems down there so it's there to open up and to bring up certain nutrients. The sorrel or the duck or the rumex, yeah. So that's one of my headache problems basically. How to deal with it, because you can crimp roll it and you will delay it a little bit, but it will come up. You can mow it and then it will come up. It seems to just always grow a little bit in advance of the crop that you are planting. So if you try to overgrow it, it will always be a little bit quicker. If you make a crop of 3 meters, it will grow 3 meters. It is just
We had an event with Ian Robertson there in his farm, which is a British farmer consultant, very very interesting guy, and he said that in the UK now they pay people to take the humex by hand.
yeah.
Exactly. If he was me, maybe I would consider, if you get some, cheap enough labor, to put 10 people just taking them all by hand.
Oh, como é que chama? É minha?
Não,
Lavassa.
For future, take around the 6th of October.
Yeah.
You have already sown the right?
Sorry, if you?
You have already sown around there?
No. I.
Just my experience. What I do is, like, when I'm harvesting, 1 week, 2 weeks, depends. I immediately start sowing.
Yeah. So if it opened up, you would just broadcast the crop in there, or. So in this condition, you would already broadcast the crop in there.
Yeah.
2 weeks before harvest. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
If you harvest in August, obviously you're not going to sow in August, but when you get the temperature is changing in September, it's like you have to anticipate the ones, and then you start suppressing. With my
Yeah,
colleagues,
yeah. That's what I am planning to do, but I had a bit of an issue with my machine and the rowing distance or the row distance. I thought I couldn't change the row distance.
Yeah.
So this is still on 32.5, and I have a tractor track width of 1.50 meters.
Okay.
And I couldn't drive through without making a lot of damage. But I will definitely, but I will definitely do or try the next time. Yeah.
What was the, sorry, I didn't...
Antecipar o crescimento destas épocas quando estás a estar atento quando estás a ver, estar atento a quando o tempo está tipo a mudar e antecipar e começar a semear logo mais cedo, estás cada vez a suprimir mais.
The thing is that we're too dry to actually broadcast or plant right after harvest, but we're too dry for them to appear right away in our context. So we'll try to plant it in like early September, just before the rains, and then when it rains, it'll actually overtake the.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be right after or just before harvest. It depends on your context. If you're
a little bit as well. Yeah. it depends on your climate context, but also on what kind of machinery is available, of course. But I think it makes sense to try to make an overlap in it, yeah, to suppress weeds, etc. Yeah. So yes, yeah, these were the peas. I also planted in June, and so this is the here left. You see the result. It was the 28th of July, and this year I'm gonna do everything no-till and only plant peas instead of soybeans, because I'm still working on the soybean varieties that work well. Since here I think it's okay, but the harvest was still not good enough to make enough money, I think. So there's some upgrading to do.
Why do you want soybeans instead of peas?
Exactly, that's another question. Maybe I'm growing out of context. That's what I sometimes am doubtful about, because we are way more north. So, but it's either, well, the newer varieties, they are more cold tolerant, the newer varieties of soybeans. So either this might be the trick, or maybe change to peas.
How much are organic soybeans at the moment paid?
Last time I got a little below 70 cents per kilogram, euro
70
cents.
per kilogram.
Yeah, and peas are, I think, between 40 and 50, depending on the market. But you might get some more yield, and it is a bit earlier, so that can be an advantage.
Do you, for the seeds, it's easy to get organic seeds for all crops that you want to cultivate, or you make your own seeds, or
We can get almost every seed organically, and in some situations we are allowed to use seeds from non-organic, but then they need to be untreated, of course. Yeah, I think it's European, but I where possible, I try to reuse my own seeds. It's just cost effective, and also I think it, well, you get the plants will get used to your climate and your situation. So what's it called again? The effect, epigenetic effect, exactly. So try to make use of it.
Like, for example, the pumpkins, you cannot do that because it's an hybrid, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hybrids are a bit of a downside there, because you are obligated to buy these generally very expensive seeds. So, but you know, they say if you want to control the economy, you need to have the oil. If you want to control the people, you need to have the seeds.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of, yeah. So in the same field, same trial, but then with blue lupins, and that worked really well. So I was quite happy with that as a result. You see a few weeds. They generally are lack of calcium weeds, but I was quite happy with this. Here I'm with the planter this time. I have a small trial with pumpkins in a crop of veg, hairy veg. That's a bit shocking. Oh, I don't know why it is so. So again, I crimp roll in the front of the tractor and then plant in the back. And my planter I have changed a little bit, and here I took them out. You can normally drive a bit quicker, but I ran a tractor on GPS and then went out of the tractor, so it's driving alone. But otherwise I couldn't make the movie. So, but I made these kind of slicers. I made them myself, so it pre-slides. That's for some calcium or kind of extra fertilizer. And here I'm testing different kind of closing wheels. The filming is a little bit bad, but it's quite a thick mat. So, but here that's a little bit of gypsum, but here you see the seed furrow, and that's how it kind of looks like.
You put gypsum in the line?
Yeah, I've done some trials with it. Yeah, we are very high in magnesium and a bit too low in calcium. So the calcium-magnesium ratio isn't perfect, and that makes the soil really tough. So I'm really struggling to get a seed slot to get it closed properly. And that's why I start working with gypsum now. As I told in the beginning, that the chemical part is also something not to oversee. It's very important because it will also influence the mechanical behavior of your soil and also the physical behavior. So
Esse é um produto que ainda não temos em Portugal, que é gesso em pele, em granos. É uma coisa que está. Eu estou a tentar a biocal que eles comecem a fazer. Isso é um produto brasileiro.
Disparou a lista
Gesso? Pois.
4 anos, passou de 30 para quase 70 e tal.
70 euros, não é?
Estão lá.
E se for granulado, vai também ser. Mas dá jeito para pôr na linha.
So, well, here you see the results. My main problems, like I just said, is the calcium-magnesium ratios and the difficulties with it to get the seed slot closed. If you cannot get a seed slot properly closed, you will get problems with either slugs or bad germination or insects or whatever goes in there. You will lose plants, as you see here. It's just there are many plants losing. Here you see that if the locations where the plants are at, it is fine and you will suppress the weeds. So, but as soon as you have a bed stand, you leave your system open, weeds will take over. So that is a technical thing that you really have to keep an eye on. I have had quite some bad experiences as well. Not every attempt has been successful. This was 2 or 3 years ago. Also cereal rye, I crimper rolled it. It was a nice mat of cereal rye, but somehow it didn't really seem to be willing to grow the soybeans and the white clover. It came in voluntarily, so it just completely took over. It was a complete disaster. It was just no harvest. It was a small plot, so it was a trial, but that still happens too much, unfortunately. So not every attempt is always successful. That's why I, especially in the beginning, in the first few years, should try small plots and learn all the ins and outs. This was in 22. We had quite a good stand actually, but we completely dried out. And also the CN ratio for this crop wasn't, it was one of my first bigger attempts and I missed it a little bit. So I thought, we need to introduce diversity, like you mentioned. So I had a mixture of cereal rye, I think some triticale was in there, but also some barley, some brassicas, overwintering brassicas. And it turned out that the brassicas, they of course bloom much earlier than the cereals and the legumes, and they already made seeds before I was able to roll the grasses. So here you see a lot of volunteers already, and you see the lack of nitrogen on the plants, which is not only, I think, the CN ratio, but also just a lack of water, so nothing was mineralized, and it was...
I work with those 2 issues that I was explaining you, because actually then, because of the brassicas, for you to get like the perfect stage, you're going to get the seed of brassicas, so next year I will change into a rye with veg to terminate the other cover crop. I do that.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So you terminate the volunteer.
Like 1 year I use one, the other year I use the other one.
Yeah. And what do you plant as a cash crop in the brassicas?
Normally I'm planting millet.
Millet. Yeah. Okay. And that worked well?
Yeah.
Not too the brassicas didn't take too much nitrogen for the millet to grow?
No. I don't use like a lot of brassicas. It's really it's finding out the right percentage. For example, what I have more in that mix is cereals like triticale, black oats, white oats.
Yeah.
I use the peas, but I have a small amount of brassicas. Brassicas always happen. It always happened to me that thing of leaving the seed.
Yeah. And the black oats, do they overwinter here? You use them as a winter cover crop, or?
Yeah. Very good one. It also makes a lot of biomass.
Yeah, interesting. This year I've made a mixture of cereal rye and then normal winter oats, so the yellow, I think you call it, or the standard winter oats. So see how that's going to work out.
The winter oats normal, I do it with fava bean. But it's for harvesting the seed of oats and the fava bean.
Yeah. The oats, they apparently have a very good reducing effect. It's really good for the soil. Yeah. So you see a little bit of planting depth, but I think there are different theories, but I think planting depth is just according to seed size. What I do experience though, especially in the beginning when you're in the transition, that it's more difficult to start with cash crops with bigger seeds. Small seeds, especially in the beginning, the soil is not so resilient yet, it's not so loose yet. Small seeds can be very difficult because you have to put them shallow in the soil, and if the soil is a bit hard because your biology is not so active yet, or in the beginning I would really focus on a bit the bigger seeds. It really helps. And also in your cover crop you should maybe add a little bit more legumes in the beginning, since the nutrient cycle hasn't really picked up yet. So here you see it as well, left, that was a good stand of pumpkins, and there's, well, not really mentionable amount of weeds, and then right, it was a terrible mess because of the bad stand, and that's why this closing system of your planter is so really important, and getting a good start and stand of plants. So here I'm planting a winter wheat. I currently still do it in 2 passes, so after this I'm gonna go over it another time. Here I'm planting the beans first. I plant them really deep, and then the second pass I will plant the winter wheats, but as soon as I have the financial possibility, I'm gonna build a second tank on the planter so I can do it all in one pass.
And when you see the wheat, you are in the same orientation, or you change it a little bit?
In the same parts of the row, basically, of the cover crop. No, I will move it a little bit.
Here, now you are seeding fava beans, and then you seed wheat in the second time.
Yeah, I offset my GPS generally a little bit. Yeah. So this is that was last autumn. This is the result. I just took this picture last week. I'm really happy with the result. It was planted, I think, the end of October, and it looks really good. Color looks fantastic, and it's well, not completely weed free, but there's not a lot of weeds, and it is a.
Do you have snow?
Sometimes, depending on the year. Yeah, but generally not for really long. Yeah. So this is the result. And this was 2022. Where I also direct drilled the winter wheat, and here you see the results from 2 years ago. There was some volunteer alfalfa in it, because previously it was a crop of grass with alfalfa and clover, but I was quite happy with it. This is what I mentioned before with the dye of colors of different crops. So especially here in the bottom picture you see for example, the color of a faba bean, which you see here left, and then compared to the color of a grass or a brassica. So, and I think this color effect is something we might use. I think in very dry or hot conditions you would try to get a lighter color, and in areas where warming up in the spring can be problematic, you might maybe mix in elements that will turn black if you kill it. But it's just a thought, and well, I think we all know the effect of soil temperature on the moisture usage. So if you reach up to 60 degrees, which is really realistic, you will already start killing off biology, and at 45 or 54 degrees there's basically 100% loss of moisture.
É livro que eu ainda não li, mas recomendo, mesmo sem ler, porque o Dale Strickler é mestre. Aliás, Vamos ver quando é que conseguimos ter cá em Portugal, porque é mesmo, e ele trabalha muito em ambientes secos também, e é espetacular. Specialist in cover crops. He's a cover crop specialist and a farmer and
Yeah.
a cattleman.
He's really he can explain things really easily. His book it's a good book. I can recommend it. Yeah. So this is my approach, my system approach. So all my machinery, either I till or I direct drill, whatever, everything is 3 meter. Then I have a wheat harrow, or if I put manure out or something, I do it on 9 meter, which means that I use this track, and then I have a sprayer which is 27 meters, so which is 3 times 9 meters. So that's how I can always drive in the same tracks basically. So this is my track control. And then I chose for 18.75 centimeters, because if you skip a row, you have 37.5, which then, if you have a tractor with small tires, based on 1 meter 50 track width, you can drive in between the rows. It will work with 75 centimeters as well, which is generally the row width for potatoes. And even if you introduce a system, sugar beets for example, 50 centimeters, you will be able to use the tractor with this width. You can drive in between the rows. So this works really well for me. That's why I'm so keen on having this width. And if you, well, since we now try to implement some agroforestry strips as well, I use the same system. So put the rows of the agroforestry trees 20 centimeters plus then the 1 meter 80 that I use as a width for the tree line. Yeah, what I find very important, especially in the weather conditions, but also in areas where you don't have any frost or something, is the weight of your machinery. You should really try to reduce as much weight as you can, and also of course work on in conditions that are favorable. And these days there are tires on the market, either EF, which stands for increased flexibility, and you have the VF ones, they stand for very flexible. And I try to drive with the VF tires. They're more expensive, but you can reduce your tire pressure with around 40%. Because you have to keep in mind that 1 bar, it's 1 ton per square meter. Every tenth of a bar you can reduce your tire pressure is 100 kilo per square meter. So it makes sense. Why would you give your plants a hard life by compacting your soil? You know, it will cost you yield. So, and this is, I plant my cover crops on this 18.75 centimeters. And then here you can see the red line is where I'm done currently planting, and the striped line is the planting line of the cover crop. So I offset my GPS 9 centimeters, and then I will plant in between the rows of the cover crop. Because if you plant on top of the row of the cover crop, it's basically one row of hair balls, of root balls, and it makes, well, the soil is all glued together by the roots and grabbed together, and it is very difficult to get your seed slot closed. So that is.
So José was saying, if you normally what José does, and also we do a little bit, it's like we don't use this row, we just like put a little bit of angles.
Yeah.
When we do
That can be a system as well, especially if you do not have GPS, for example. GPS can be very helpful in this condition, and if you don't have GPS, then maybe an angle might be a smarter. Yeah, definitely, yeah. And here you see then how you have the ability, if you go in between, you can get a nice seed furrow. And since slugs are a bit issue, you see a small blue kernel here. So I, at the same time, do put a small amount of slug pellets in there.
So when you, the image that you showed us before, you know, you have 27 meters and so on. My question is, you calculate your passage of your sprayer to your cash crop, not to your cover, because you have 9 centimeters. It's just 9 centimeters, but I know that makes the difference, because if your line goes in the passage of the tractor, we will.
Yeah, you mean do I offset my cover crop rows or do I offset my?
Cash crop.
I think you should. Doesn't matter, whatever you prefer or whatever you like. Yeah, yeah. But I think it might make sense to do either do it the one way or the other way, but or swap it or. But yeah, it's 9 centimeters. It is a bit of a difference, but I don't really care about the 9 centimeters.
Yeah, I was just curious, when you do the angle, don't you risk having air beneath them to evolution? No, doesn't make sense?
No.
I was thinking like
If the discs are crossing.
Exato, não apanha as palhas, não apanha as fibras.
Yes. I don't
When
have
you
that
can you not
experience.
risk more air beneath?
Yeah, yeah. It of course it might happen, but
If you are working with
With the cleaner.
a very used disc, yeah. But
Okay.
if you are working with like a good
Yeah.
normal disc, you will catch some, but it's not like
Yeah.
an issue, at least.
well, the message basically is work out the system, work systematically, and if an angle works for you, perfect, do it. But at least these are things that you have to keep in mind to get a better effect. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I plant green and then roll. So
Yeah.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, can be a good option. Yeah. Well, and as well. Yeah, sure, go.
After you see, as you show in your pumpkins, in your squash, you have problems sometimes to close the
Yes.
Do you sometimes sometimes you use it? You pass a Rolo packer, Rolo printer,
Yeah.
Rolo packer after
Yeah.
crossing. Just to we speak about that yesterday.
Yeah.
Do you use it or not?
I don't. Well, I maybe sometimes should, but I do not have a roller myself. Then I have to rent one and have to drive quite far to pick it up. So I'm not really a big fan of the hassle. And but it might definitely be an option. But I really try to work out a system that works in one pass, because I'm alone and I just want it to be efficient. And also I think when it is efficient and an easy system, it is easier for to explain to farmers, and they will more easily adapt it.
I've been getting good results with the other closing those.
Yeah, exactly. But closing, we will get more into the technique of the planter afterwards. But closing the seed trench, that's basically the most important. Basically, it makes it makes the system or breaks the system. Yeah. So here you see some different seed slots. Sometimes they stay a little bit open, like you see here in the top left. This one, maybe with a packer roller, you might be good, but I'm still kind of okay. Left bottom is even better. And here you see, well, seeding depth and the seed environment. But yeah, I prefer to see it like this, basically. And here you see, it was also, the conditions were too wet, but last year we simply didn't get any better conditions. What happens if the seed slot stays a little bit open and you don't really crumble the sides, then when you have wet conditions and it does get dry afterwards, it will just open up, basically. The soil shrinks a little bit and it will just open up again, and you will have a very poor result. So the focus points are the C/N ratio. You have to treat your cash crop or your cover crop as a cash crop. If you have a bad cover crop, you're not going to get any weed suppression, and you're not going to have all the mineral availabilities, etc. So if you have a nice cover crop, you really increase your chances of a good cash crop. Really try to put your cover crops in timely fashion so they can develop properly. If you grow polycultures, cover crop polycultures, try to find mixtures that kind of ripen or bloom at the same time, or at least close to each other. Yeah, I can't say it often enough, but just make sure you get your seed furrow closed and preferably a little bit crumbled. Slugs, mice, definitely issues or things that you have to keep an eye on. It's really important. They can make huge damages, especially slugs. moisture uptake of your cover crops. Different cover crops have different behaviors and different moisture needs. In dry conditions, you might have to use different cover crops than in moist conditions. The nitrogen fixation, especially in the beginning of the cash crop development. The row distances can make a big difference. Plant either in green material or in very dry and I think you call it briquette when it breaks easily. But don't plant in anything in between. When it is tough, we will have a small test with a bale that we roll out. It is tough material. Well, I think it's not really new, but you will see it's not going to work. You're not going to cut through. So it either needs to be green and fresh, or it needs to be dry and brittle, so it will break. Because one of my main struggles is planting into a stubble, a wheat stubble with chopped straw. I find it really, really difficult, especially with a disc machine. And I think in these conditions, a tine machine might even be a better option. Seeding rates, maybe in the beginning, especially when you're in the beginning of the transition, maybe lift up your seeding rates a little bit. Or if the conditions are not perfect, the seeding times of the cover crop, and the cover crop needs to be successful, but I already mentioned. Yeah, well, cool. Okay, now we go a little bit more into the planter details, at least how I interpreted it. Again, slug issues, something that can be really severe. It's something definitely you have to keep an eye on. I changed the standard rubber closing wheels that you generally have on a planter for the steel ones. Here on the bottom, it's the original steel one. And now last year, since getting the seed trench closed in certain conditions can be so challenging, I bought an extra set. And on the top one, you see, I just welded spikes on it to be able to penetrate the mulch, and then by penetrating get a better closing effect.
So this would be the wheels you recommend similar to this here?
Then I would recommend the bottom ones without spikes, because if you don't have a big layer of mulch, it might go too deep and it might dig out the seeds again. So that's why I bought two sets. So for normal planting with tillage in my situation, I will use the bottom ones, and then it's only, this is a planter, so it's only 4 rows, so that means 8 wheels that I need to change.
You don't get any wrapping on the spike ones?
That's why I made it in a bit of an angle,
Yeah.
so that they will, if you will mount them the other way around, so it will hook behind organic matter and it will pull it up. But if you do the other way around, then it will kind of drop them. So that's why I made a little bit of an angle of it. And this one, it's just a Gandhi. It's from a brand called Gandhi. They're quite. I think it's an American made. It's just a granular spreader. So I do sometimes put out a little bit of slug pellets with it, and I'm now gonna make this one mobile, so I can also. This is on the drill now, but I can also put it on the planter, and then I will just drop without the how do you call them, the steel plates below it. I will just put a hose on top of the row. So you will have, after closing, you will have a little bit of slug pellets on top of the road. So you can only have, you can only...
You can use them on organic?
Yes. What kind of slug pellet?
Yeah, they are organically allowed, and it's based on iron phosphate. And then I think on top of it I will also spray some iron sulfate already on the cover crop, because the blood of slugs is based on copper, where our blood is based on iron for transporting oxygen. And so the iron is toxic for them. So I was thinking of getting higher iron levels in my cover crops. Maybe it helps to kind of repel slugs. don't know if it's going to work, but it's, well, at least worth a try. And I think by putting it really as a small strip, some slug pellets on top of the furrow, I hope that they will eat my cover crop, since this is also part of the nutrition cycle, you know. I don't mind having slugs, but I do mind having them on my crop and not on the cover crop. So that's what I will try this year. Then you can use 2 or 3 kilograms per hectare, which is half, not even half of the rate of the normal rate. So then I made here in the top left, I copied it from what I saw on the internet. So you have just a straight single disc, and this is the driving direction. So the idea is that exactly there, at this point where the disc enters the soil, that you left and right will have a disc or a small wheel that will hold the material. Because if you do not hold it, you have a big chance that it will push it into the soil. So you will literally hold it and then cut it. You get a much better result, which you can see here in the bottom picture. Because this long, tall rye, last year it was almost as high as the cabin of the tractor, so 2.5 meters. But it is very sensitive for lodging. You know, if you have a storm a few days or a week before you want to plant, it is lodging, and you have everything across your seeding direction. It's something out of your control, and then you have a problem if you don't have. Yeah.
The disc that cuts, why don't you have it
with the notches?
Yes. Not like in the second photo, you know, but
yeah,
like
straight.
Like in the disc that you see.
Yeah. Because I want to cut it everywhere, not because the place where the notch is, the disc is not sharp, so you will push it in the soil. I have fear, at least I'm not sure. And these are all discs that, these are old worn out discs that are normally here, that are normally part of the disc opener, so I could reuse it. Yeah, so I basically extended the frame. I bought an extra bar, so I could put this in between. I have added weights. This is 250 kilogram each. And then I've also made a few frames, so I've added 60 kilograms per element. And I took out the springs and added a cylinder, which you can see here. So now I can hydraulically put pressure on it. So in this setting, I have the ability to put around 400 kilograms per element of pressure on it. The only problem now is, since it is getting so long, that it's a bit heavy for the tractor. The tractor has an own weight of less than 4 tons. So I'm now going to make it a pulled machine, because then you can drive with an empty tractor. You can really release air pressure out of the tires. So that's what I'm trying now. That's what I'm planning to do for this year. And then I've added here in the middle, I've added this disc, and you can take the whole element off with only 3 balls. So I think in the spring I will use this disc. It will help to get a little bit of loose soil in your seed furrow. And then in the autumn, or when I plant into stubble, I might replace them for a kind of a row cleaner. I don't have them yet, but I will in the future. So here you see the closing system without the welded on spikes. So here you see the row cleaners that I am maybe going to use this year. And I'm going to take these closing wheel arms completely off and replace them for the ones you see here in the middle. I ordered them this winter, and the advantages is that you can, well, both, of course, easily adjust the pressure of the spring, which is possible here as well, but you can also change the angle. So, and that is, I think, very helpful. You can, because it makes it more aggressive, you can get a more aggressive closing. And in certain conditions, and you can also open it back up again when you have a tilt conditions. And then on top of it, I am considering of maybe letting or cutting some pieces of steel, some discs basically, that I can then mount on the inside of the closing wheel to get a bit heavier weight, because it's just I can't say it often enough, but it is so important to get a proper seat close or a seat furrow closure. It's just basically what makes or ruins the system. So it's really that should be a very good or very strong focus point, getting your seat close or seat furrow closed. Well, I did. This is the original closing wheel here from the John Deere, from the drill that I run, and I took them off and replaced them for the ones. I think these are from Exapta. It's an American company. In America, you have several companies. You have Exapta. You have the ones you mentioned. Martin, yeah, exactly. Jetter, Martin-Till. So you have a few companies in America that are only specialized in additional tools for original planters. You have different closing wheels there, but I chose those because of the width of the wheel. They are quite narrow, and in my conditions they work really well. The wider you take them, of course, the less aggressive they will be. And then you can also adjust the spring pressure here a little bit. In no-till conditions where I plant green, I really put the spring pressure as strong as I can get. Yeah. And in tilt conditions, you just adjust it accordingly. And these are the wheels that are that you can adjust the depth with, so they are adjustable, the height of these side wheels. And then you do have the ability, if you see the wheels here, they have a width of, well, I would say around 10 centimeters. If you have fields that are not so level, or you have a lot of tracks, you might consider buying smaller wheels. They're not cheap though, but if you have smaller wheels, you are not so sensitive for unlevelness. And then if you are constantly planting in wet conditions, you can also get them, these rims are closed, but you can also get them with spoke wheels, and that allows in very muddy conditions to get, you will always have a little bit of mud in these conditions sticking on the discs, and it might really plug up the inside of the planting depth wheel. So if you have spoke wheels, the mud can get out. In certain conditions it can be helpful. I don't think it's really an issue here, since mostly I think you're struggling with drought. But
at this time, when we start seeing when the rain comes, we have problems with the clay that gets stick to the roots.
Then the spoke wheels might be a solution. And also, but if you take the smaller wheels, for example, you might also have to lower down your pressure a little bit, because you can create a little bit of a compaction.
When you say smaller wheels, it's slimmer.
Yes, slimmer. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And then I also added some air exhausts or air fans, so that you lose the air pressure in here. Most of the air gets out there, and then the seat, they drop more naturally, because you might have
bounce back.
Yeah, not but here you see this blue little thing you see there. Yeah. It is the seat flap. It's straight behind the seat boot, and that avoids seeds jumping out of the seat furrow, which will jump out because of the air flow actually. So you press them in with air pressure, or you shoot them in basically. And by adding this exhaust or this air outlet, you will reduce the speed a little bit. It will fall more naturally, so you can reduce these shootout effect. So these are and then now I changed the settings or the width of the elements to 18.75. One of my future plans is to add an extra tank. So the idea is then to put the faba beans, for example, if I plant a mixed crop, to put the faba beans here in the front rows, and then put the winter wheat or the oats or whatever you plant as a companion crop in the rear row, and then the winter beans go go in really deep, and then in the rear row where you plant the wheat, for example, you can plant them much more shallow, but all in one pass. So that's a future plan. One thing that I can really strongly recommend for these planters and drills, they are generally expensive tools to buy, but if you buy a good one, you can and you maintain it. They're generally built in such a way that if you do the maintenance in time, that it's basically a machine for your lifetime. So I would really encourage people to put effort in it when it comes to maintenance, to keep your discs sharp, because you will have much better results, and also just to keep it in good condition, because it's nice to pick a machine out of your out of the shed and then work with it instead of first take 2 days to repair everything. You know, agriculture is all about timing, so make sure it works.
When you finish, for example, I put always baby powder in the pipes and everything, so that.
Yeah. That's something I don't do, but I do make sure that when I bought it, for example, everything was worn out, so I ordered a whole new part kit from the States.
If you use like the Wasemael cubes outside and then put baby powder.
Yeah.
Like when you grab the machine, it's.
Yeah. And it makes sense, you know. It's you seeds are expensive.
Small tricks that can put a lot of money and time in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you do have these days there are different kind of seeding principles or mechanisms. So you have the cross-lot. It's you see it down here. It's basically a disc over here with half of a T-shape on the left side of the disc and half of a T-shape of the right side of the disc. So it's called cross-lot, and they are claiming that they have much higher and better results when it comes to germination. You do get a kind of small greenhouse effect in there, so I'm really a big fan of the shape. You can also get it with just time machines. It's a very neat machine, but the planter is really heavy and you need quite a bit of power, so you need a strong tractor to pull it. This is the principle of John Deere, so they generally have a disc set in an angle of, I think it's 7 degrees, or I don't know exactly, and it will allow basically by this angle to drop the seeds into the soil, and then I'm currently a very big fan of this principle here. There are different brands with the same principle. It's a disc that is also sideways in an angle, and then on the same time it is in vertical way, it is also put in an angle of around 20, 25, I think 21 degrees. And it is a very clever system. I think it's the way to go, actually. If I would buy another machine, I would definitely currently go for this system. I think.
Cross-lot.
No, not a cross-lot, but because the cross-lot is a heavy machine and you need quite a strong machine.
Because the double disc is so true. What is there? Double disc makes really that kind of work.
Yeah.
Seedling emergency and the hoe, it's there. That is so real.
But my question is, the cross-lot in heavy soils cannot make you some compaction in the bottom of the row? In the wet conditions?
It might be. Well, you do not always have a choice, I understand that, but you should try to avoid planting in wet conditions, especially when it comes to no-till. It's something to keep an eye on. I have never worked with it, but I don't think it's a real problem. No, I don't think it's more of a problem with a disc drill than with a cross-lot system. But I'm a really big fan currently of this here on the left side, left down, because it's also a disc system, but it is in an angle, vertically and horizontally, and that makes that it.
Technically, how do you call it?
This one is called an undercut system.
Undercut.
Undercut. So you will see it in this picture. So if you take, this is the single disc, that's basically the principle that the John Deere and the machine we have seen here on the yard, That's what the principle is based on. And so you create a seed furrow by pushing the soil, by forcing it into the other soil, basically. So you create a compaction zone on the side of the, where is it? Here, you create a compaction zone over here. And then your closing wheel needs to break it. That's why I'm so keen on having these teeth, the wheels with the points at least. So it will then crush basically this compaction zone that you have created with the disc. So this is the V double disc. So it's basically where the most planters are based on. So you get quite a bit of compaction in your seed furrow below. So this is the, you have here they took a double disc as an example, but you also have the same principle with a single disc. And then instead of a second disc, you have a seed boot. So which you see here. So it's basically a single disc with which is angled in two directions. And the neat thing of this system is that you open up your soil not by pressing it into the other soil, but by lifting it up in the air. So you create a kind of seed flap of soil that you open up. Yeah, you put the seeds underneath, and by gravity it already kind of closes. And the interesting thing as well is it's like a plow basically. It pulls itself into the soil instead of you have to push it. Instead of you have to push it, it pulls itself in the soil. So it's working with gravity instead of against it basically. And that's why I'm a really big fan of this system.
And you can change if you have like a Março or John Deere. You can change the system by asking some.
No, John Deere is not delivering this. Horse, for example, can't deliver it. Horizon is one of the brands. It's an English made that has this system. In the UK, you have what's it called again? No, Sky is also a single disc opener, but you also have the Weaving. It's also an English brand. They have the double disc system, literally as you see it here. That's a weaving system. But in France, you, for example, have the company, it's called Agricultura, and the Agricultura Minibus, I think it's called. They also have this system with an angle, with a single disc. And currently, if I would buy a machine now, I would definitely go for the single disc with this undercut system. I completely love it. And you can also, so here you see it, they have a really good options when it comes to adjusting. So you can adjust height or depth easily. You can adjust the pressure. You can adjust the angle of the closing wheel, and you can get different closing wheels. So I think either this and this are currently the best systems on the market.
What's the brand of
This
this
one, what is it called again?
Could you write down the brands for us that do this kind of?
Yeah. This one is the on the left down is called Agricultura. Yeah, it's a French brand. Horizon. Novak, exactly. Novak has this system, and it gives you this cross slot idea, and then they have the option that you, on the left side, for example, you place the seeds, and on the right side you place the fertilizer. Then here you have a single disc option. You have Horizon and Agricultura, and the double disc option is Weaving. And I think they're all nice machines. The weaving is a bit easier to adjust, but I don't really like the fact that you cannot adjust the closing wheel pressure from the weaving. But I think that currently I would go for either Agricultura or I wouldn't go for Novak because it's just a really heavy machine and it needs quite a bit of power. it does a really good job though. But I would go for either AgriSem or Horizon currently. But it might also be a matter of taste. But I really like the systems.
When I have the money to change my seeder, I will contact you for it.
Well, I'm not here basically for commercial purposes, but yeah, I really like them, and I've seen some of them work in practice, and it's just I think it's the way to go. Well, oh yeah, and then diversity. I think it's a bit unnecessary to mention. We all know the advantage of the diversity here. This is from Christine Jones, where she shows on the bottom side polyculture of triticale, and then planted in the same soil at the same time in the same conditions, etc. They planted a polyculture of on the left hand side mentioned crops, and just the difference, I think it speaks for itself. So I try to introduce the polycultures, which you can see here. So left, I did a trial with winter peas combined with winter wheat, and then on the right hand side, this was last year in the middle, and this one was in 2021. And what I find so cool about the system, that last year we had a very wet year and the faba beans really took over, and in 2021 we had a much drier year, and that's where the wheat was much more dominant. So it's a bit of a story of 1 and 1 is 3 instead of 1 and 1 is 2. And I do different trials. So on the right hand side it was a monoculture or monocrop of soybeans, and here I did a trial with soybeans mixed with buckwheat, and I also added a little bit of what's it called again, linseeds, but I never found the linseeds back, but still a lot to optimize. But
you managed to harvest at the same time the buckwheat with the soybean?
yes, but what
You had such a short cycle.
yeah, no, it worked well actually, but the next time I would reduce the amount of buckwheat, because they slowed down the drying process of the soybeans, so everything was much wetter. And a good combinations that work for me or in our conditions are vetch with mustard, vetch with oats, winter barley with crimson clover, winter wheat with white clover as an understorage. These are mixes that work well for us. A similar story for cover crops. I mix my own cover crops. Minimum 4 plant families, the more the better. Well, if you use a sun and put it into through a certain plant into a certain task, then you can get rid of compaction by planting how do you call it, radishes, for example, or you can create biomass or extend growing season, weed suppression, etc., or for food for animals. What I generally do, if I make a mixture, I go in afterwards and then with pen and paper, and then, okay, if I see, well, maybe C3 grass would be, it would have been nice that a C3 grass wasn't there, then I will write it down, and then next year I will add C3 grasses, or if I see, well, I really like for example, how it's called, the sorghum Sudan. But I think I need more, because sorghum Sudan, the C4 grasses are generally good in suppressing C3 grasses. And in our climate, blackgrass can be quite an issue. Then you might add, so then I will add a little bit of C4 grasses in it, or I will add a little bit more in it, so to suppress more to suppress the blackgrass. These kind of things, I'll just go in and really try to adjust it or to judge it and then optimize it for the year after. It's not only because of the different root structures, but also you will increase lots of leaf surface, And yeah, everything is about harvesting sun. So if you have more leaf surface and more leaf architecture, then you can just harvest more sun. And like we mentioned in the field, if you, for example, have a legume and you put a grass beside it that is taking the nitrogen from the legume, it also stimulates the legume to produce more nitrogen. So you will get overall you will get a higher productive system. And in a lot of situations, plants work together instead of compete with each other. So yeah. Another thing is relay cropping. This is an example from Jason Mark. It's quite a cool system actually, because he grows winter wheat in either rows or in strips, and then in the next spring he will plant soybeans in between. So he has a system also with a certain row distance, and then his tractors and his combines, etc., they are all at a certain track width that fits in between these rows. So since when the winter wheat is drying off and ripening, you will have no photosynthetic capacity anymore, and then the soybeans start to take over, and then he puts a kind of rubber strips or something on his header of the combine. So he will harvest off the winter wheat, and then with these rubber strips, they will protect the soybeans from the knives, so it doesn't damage them. So he harvests off the wheat, and then the soybeans take over. So he basically has.
I already saw videos and everything, but I would love to see it by one for real.
But I have seen this, but the header of the machine was different. It's the header that just cut the. Aquela azul,
Yeah. But I think even if you just have a knife header, a standard header, if you just put a small plastic or something exactly on the knives, exactly where the soybeans are, they will just.
Also very important here again to define the variety of wheat that we are using. For example, the Portuguese wheat variety would be almost impossible because it will create shadow, or it will enable the soybeans to catch sunlight. But at the same time, if it's too low, you will damage the soybean when you are harvesting them.
You have to cut it a bit higher, definitely.
And to choose the varieties, it's a work. But I think that could work to us in dry conditions to make wet, and then beans, not soybeans, because soybeans has no value added.
Yeah.
But feijão prado, black eyed beans.
Yeah.
Or other summer
Yeah.
crop that to us it's difficult sometimes to have wet conditions to take it over. So if you have already a wet that give you a coverage, so you have still moisture to have germination. I think this system has a lot of future.
Yeah, I think so too. And you can and have to adopt it according to your climate, your situation, etc. Well, I did try it with cover crops, because we had a stubble of winter wheat. With a planter based on 75 centimeters, I planted hairy vetch, the radish in here. My son here, he's just holding one of them. So I planted them in 75 centimeter rows. And then with the drill, I went over again and added the vetch. So the vetch was delivering the nitrogen for the radish. And here you see the radish they have a very good ability to take up phosphorus, and they will kind of concentrate it around it. So what I did with the use of GPS, the next spring I planted my sunflowers on top of this row. So you get a kind of organic strip till system without using machinery. And I think these are also things that we might start to use in the future. I think it's a clever and cool way to kind of strip till without the use of machinery. So you can do this in cash crops, but you might also do this with the use of cover crops. So because it's the force of plants and the way to get rid of compaction. I think it's enormous. The radishes, they are extremely strong. This was last year in kind of compacted a clot, and they have an enormous high pressure in this tip of the roots. They will just press through everything. As you see here in this tree, it's a bit extreme, but it shows the potential. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then I'll get. I showed this before. It is Dutch, but I think you can read it as well. About the fact that 97% of the plant is made from free available stuff in the air. So if you take the soil always has a certain amount of water in it, and it is pulled up, this water, by the moon, for example, if you like the tides, you know, at the sea. But it also it has the moon has a very big attraction to water, so it will pull up the water, and by pulling up the water, it presses out all the CO2 which is in the soil, which is produced by all your microorganisms, and this CO2 is captured by the leaves via the stomata, which are mostly on the bottom side of your leaves. So that's, I think, you will get most of the CO2.
It's a diaphragm.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the
The soil is just constantly breathing. It's high pressure, low pressure.
Influencia as marés, também influencia se houver permeabilidade no solo, a água vai em cima e abaixo e chupa e manda fora gás. Se tiver tudo completado muito mal. Então é muito potente.
It is actually really important because you push out all the CO2, all the carbon, and it has been taken up by the plants, because most of the plants carbon that plants get is via the soil, via the circulation. And then when the sun comes up and the moon goes down, it will basically drop down again, and it will pull all the air, including all the nitrogen in the air, into the system. So that's why a very good gas exchange is so important, and this nitrogen can then be fixated with all the biology in the soil. And it's the moon, but it's also the high pressure, low pressure that has influence on it. But just wanted to say that the soil is a breeding organism, and it's.
Where did you get this picture from?
I made it myself. The one.
But where was the idea? Because the only time I've seen this was Ian Robertson and Pendler.
Yeah, from them, but I've heard it as well. Because rain apparently also, if it rains, you get it's like a piston that goes down in an engine. If the rain sink down into the if it sinks down into the soil, you get a vacuum on top of it, and it will also help to pull air into the soil. Yeah, and so I've read it several times, and then I've seen it several times, and then I thought,
was always talking about it.
yeah. These are just some ideas to get living plants or living roots in your soil, just by direct drilling straight after. Oh, sorry, I think I pushed. But just by direct drilling straight after the combine. There are systems like you see here on the top right and bottom right, where they have built seeder systems with spreader discs here. So they are basically seeding or planting their cover crops while they are harvesting, all in one pass, because mostly the difficulty is with hairpinning, with loose straw, and if you just take the straw off, drop the seeds, and then spread the straw on top of it, it is, I think, can be really helpful.
That's yours, no? The one in the bottom?
Yeah, and then this left bottom, it's mine. I made it myself. It's from an old sprayer boom. So you can spray seeds in your crop 1, 2, 3 weeks ahead of your harvest. And then you also...
We try it here. We have the wet was already like that one. It was Sementeira Directa, so it was in June, and we see it with the drone.
Yeah.
But we didn't have, we see that Sudan grass. The objective it was after harvest week we have some living plants, so
yeah.
they can
Yeah.
the sun. The problem is that we don't have rain for 1 or 2
Yeah.
weeks, and I think the ants take the
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
away.
Yeah, you have to keep an eye on the weather predictions, definitely. But it can be a tool. Yeah, it depends on the context, etc. But it might be an option. And I use this machine as well to sometimes spread some gypsum or slug pellets or seeds. Or it's a universal tool. I really like it. And I made it on the boom of the sprayer, so if you have a very high crop, you can just lift it up to 2-3 meters. And here, the trial I did here was buckwheat. So the idea was planting buckwheat into the wheat, and then when you harvest off the wheat, the buckwheat would take over and you could get a second crop. But due to drought, and I think I was also too early, so it didn't work out. But you might, this way, you might get constant living root in your system, as well as maybe some extra harvest. Yeah, some soil.
The other photo, it's quite system good as well. That one that you have the autocast in the front of the
Yeah,
house.
these.
Because if you have a machine to spread the straw after, your seeds will be protected by the straw.
Exactly, that's the whole idea. So here it's basically the same system, but here they have the tank behind the combine, and I guess there's a pipe going to the front of the combine. So in both situations you will have a kind of dividing system that will spread the seeds here on the clean soil basically, and then you chop your straw on top of it afterwards.
Already a system that in the head of the machine already like a seeder.
Yeah, in France. I've heard Frédéric Thomas talking about it. He showed something that they made a bar here with a disc drill behind the header. Yeah, might be even better. Yeah. Yeah, here you see some profiles of our farm. So here I had also the radish in 75 centimeter rows, and then crimson clover in between. And the whole field it was completely covered with worm droppings, so you get a lot of life to the soil, because you can also kind of reproduce worms. The worms, they really like protein and calcium, and so if you grow certain cover crop mixes and carbon, then you might really get a high amount of worms, and they will really help you with water infiltration. I forgot the exact figures, but a certain amount of worms per square meter will help you to get like 100 liters of water per hour extra into your soil just by yeah. So here you see an example of it. This is my neighboring field. It was last winter, and it was in wet conditions, and it's just not really looking very well. And here, just on the left side of the ditch where I'm walking towards now, it's my own field. It was a tilled field, but with cereal rye. But the difference, I think it is quite a big difference. It's a different country. Yeah. So yeah, I think the principles, they start to pick up, and they do work.
Here you are already in organic, but still with tillage.
Yeah, still with tillage. I'm still with tillage now, and like I said, I really try to get away from tillage, but it's time consuming, and since I farm alone with kids and etc., it's always, I don't have always the time that I need to have actually, but yeah, well, that's life, I guess. And then we just spoke on the table about the influence of water and water vapor in the atmosphere, and the influence of it on temperature. Well, generally, of course, it depends a little bit where you are in the world, but 70 or 60% of all the water, the rainfall we get, comes from the oceans, and then the rest, the 40%, comes from evaporation from land. And these we can basically influence this a little bit as farmers or as landscape users. I don't know what the proper word is, because plants, they can cool our planet by evaporating water. Since if you evaporate water, you take you change it from a liquid form into a gas form. To change it from phase, it is very energy. It takes a lot of energy, so you need around 70 kilowatts of energy to change 100 liters of water from fluid into gas. And if you take, for example, a tree, it is evaporating around 400 liters of water per tree per day. So that is 280 kilowatts for one tree that it's already taking from the sun. And if you take, the system is basically, if you take a tree and take 1 square meter of area, draw it basically on the soil and go upwards. On this 1 square meter you have upward, below a tree you have around 27 square meters of leaf surface that the tree has. And so that's why it is able to evaporate so much more moisture than just a square meter of bare soil. And by this evaporation you take a lot of warmth energy out of the atmosphere. And that's why it's so important to just constantly green your fields as well, because it has a big influence on the climate. Basically, you will cool down your area by greening it. And so here you see basically that you have 70 to 80% of heat reflection if you leave it bare. And you only have 5 to 10% of heat reflection if you leave it green. And here you see a nice example of it from the rabbit fence in Australia, where on the right hand side there's a lot of agriculture with tillage and you don't see any cloud at all. And if you take the left picture, it's green because it's a natural reserve, and you see literally almost exactly where the clouds are and where you don't have clouds. And these clouds, they contain, first of all, they contain water, so it will help you to get more rain, but they also reflect sunlight, so you will not get as much sunlight on the surface. So you will, it's a bit a double cutting knife basically. You will get both more rain and you will reflect more sunlight. So this is how we can kind of cool down the.
Minimum scale, because I have listened or seen a lot of this, simply in Brazil, they call it the rain growers.
Yeah.
Agroforestry is rain growers. My question is, I don't know, but is there a minimum scale? For example, if you have 500 hectares, I don't know, but
10,000.
10,000 hectares.
Yeah, I have heard different figures. Some say around 1,800 hectares, maybe 10,000. I don't know.
You can already influence the rainfall. Wow.
Yeah, but it is very powerful.
Sintra is we have a place here where you
Yeah.
can get more, where in the summer it's so hot outside, but Sintra it's always raining.
Yeah.
It's just there because of the forest. They have trees of the Sintra. Parque Sintra. Sim, no fundo o que se pensa é que há umas bactérias que existem nas árvores, especialmente nas árvores, que sobem, e fungos que sobem no ar e realmente começam a criar.
Fazem cristalização da água e depois começam a cristalizar, começam a aglomerar.
Dizer que acima de 70 hectares já é possível fazer isso.
Pois, já há diferentes.
A questão aí depois é os fatores que
70.
quando chover.
Already, yeah. Yeah. I've heard different numbers, but you might be right. I don't know. Yeah.
Maybe what I heard is to really influence already.
Yeah.
Very big scale, not just like completely change the weather.
Yeah.
Because it's from water.
I think it's very important to us.
Plantar
The
muitas
south of the Sementeira, we are on the north, but the south of the mountain that we have here, we are in drought areas. So if we can have something that we can make our soil live after our winter crops, because from July, August till
Yeah.
At the end of our cash crops, we seed something that we don't make money of it, but still make our soils live and green
Yeah.
during summer.
Yeah.
It can help a lot.
It will definitely cool down. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, I think it is an extremely powerful tool, but we have to do it all together. You know, if the whole agriculture industry should try to should implement these principles, I think the whole climate problem. Well, it's a bit maybe too heavy of an argument, but I think we are able to cool down the world within a few years. Yeah.
10 years, 20 years.
Maybe even 2-3 years. I think it goes really quick. It works instantly, basically. Yeah.
Where Felix is from, for example, there is no trees.
Yeah.
Like hectares and hectares and hectares.
Because they are naturally not there, or they are all removed over time.
Naturally, or maybe
In the past.
centuries in the past.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think, well, you know, what all happens on the globe, I think we cannot control everything, but I'm quite certain that the way we use our landscapes, that it has a big influence on the climate that we are and the crisis that we are currently in. Yeah. Of course, there are maybe higher forces. I don't know. I don't want to go into that. But I think we, as a human being, the way we use our landscapes, we will be able to influence the weather patterns, at least up to a certain level. But I don't know. And then on top of it, also to get better use of photosynthesis and also plant health and crop plant production, etc. I started working with leaf sap analysis for 3 years ago now. And I think the main message that I have learned from working with it is that it is very important to keep an eye on the buildup of nitrates and ammonium, etc. in your leaves, because if you have a buildup of these elements in your leaves, you will get your plant very attractive for diseases and insects, etc. So I make use of these kind of graphs where, and sometimes if I hear a certain podcast and I hear something, then I just write down some additions to learn about the process of how nitrate goes into ammonium and how ammonium goes into the amino acids and proteins and which elements are needed. And I still don't have a full control of it, and because apparently it's really simple to get the nitrate and ammonium levels down to a level where it won't attract the insects, but I still struggle with it. I find it difficult to put it in practice. But
I also do step analysis, and it's never the same thing.
No.
Never, and because you cannot find the protocol there, so you really have to interpret it and then take your decisions. But what I can tell from my humble experience is it's very cheap to have high productions by managing single things like boron or molybdenum or just a little bit of tune. And you increase a lot of crop and you solve. Yeah,
because the first years I started working with it, and I bought these commercial products that are all.
Calcium helps you a little bit to lower the part of nitrates also.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the first year when I started with the leaf sap analysis, I started buying commercial products. I didn't know better. And it was just, the fun was gone quickly because it was just unaffordable for crops like wheat that they do not pay off that much per hectare. It's just too expensive. And then via Andre and other people, I started understanding how you could gelate your own trace elements with just buying the raw product in sulfate forms. And that's what I'm doing now, and it is actually not really complicated at all. And much cheaper. And now I'm in the process of trying to put this another step further by using ferments of fruits and of, so for example, pumpkins. If you take, the idea is from Nigel Palmer, or at least I read his book, that the plant will put all its energy and all his elements into his future generation, so into the seeds or the fruits. So why not use these fruits, ferment it, because the fruit will contain all the elements in the right ratios and in the right forms, directly available for the plant. So it's not going to take take a lot of energy for the plant to take these elements or trace elements.
Also for wheat, if you want to try, I have very good results on wheat to do the SPJ.
The weeds or the winter wheat, you mean? Or?
With the winter wheat, with the leaves of the winter wheat.
Also by fermenting them.
The SPJ by fermenting with the yellow sugar.
Yeah.
And then you apply it on the wheat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm gonna experiment with that this year because it makes it even cheaper and even easier actually, and you don't need all the additions and stuff that you need to buy. So I'm going towards that because I think I really like it, but it's also you have to keep spraying, and it's also labor, you know. So here you see an example of this was soybeans, for example, and then. So this was from, what is it, 29th of July, and then the 5th and 6th of August, these were the elements and the trace elements, etc., what I sprayed with fulvic acid, and then here you see the response. So that's how I use it now, and you do see the ammonium levels going down, and nitrate, I think, as well. So. But still, it's quite a dynamic.
Just I was seeing your way of seeing it. You always put fulvic acid in always or your spraying compost. You always put fulvic acid on it.
Yes, because it will improve the uptake of the elements. The plants like it, and it's also you can use humic acids, but humic acids are better for soil usage because fulvic acids, they are basically, the source is the same, but the fulvic acids, they have smaller atoms, so they will be easier to uptake, physically uptake by the plant.
This is your ratio per hectare?
Yes, this is per hectare, yeah.
But my question is, for example, to use by drone or something, do you have a minimum, maximum of fulvic acid by concentration that can it be too much or not too much?
No, well, I don't think you can put too much of fulvic acid. I shouldn't be scared for too much fulvic acid, except the fact that it is costly.
For what I know, it shouldn't cross like more than for each 100 liters of water, it should not pass like 6 liters maximum.
Yeah, but I'm here. I buy the powder. And the powder is, I think, 95%, or even it's almost 100% fulvic. So I only use. Yeah, so it's a high concentration, and also but also the source of the fulvic acid, for example. There's a difference between fulvic acid that is comes from liodornite, I think it's called, or you can also have fulvic acid that came from derived from drinking water, from cleaning drinking water, and it has a different efficiency in use. So if you have the real one, but the one that is derived from the liodornite, it will be more efficient. They say that you can use only half the rate to get the same effect.
But my next question is, we are trying to step by step reduce herbicide and fungicide and so on. So in fungicide, insecticides, fulvic acid has no effect on the plant health. But my question is, I have listened already different persons saying that if we can add fulvic acid to some kind of herbicides, or mostly some herbicides, and we can reduce the amount.
Yeah.
My question is, for example, if I have a ratio to make an herbicide in one crop, if I just put fulvic acid, that can damage my crop, or I just know that I need to go down 30% of my percentage of herbicide.
Yeah, well, the exact numbers, since I'm not experienced with chemicals, except the elements, but the whole thing is that plants really like these fulvic acids. They are very easy to uptake for them. So you will get an efficiency increase by using the fulvic acids. And then every chemical has an optimal pH, water pH, where you can spray it with. So I think glyphosate, for example, the best pH to get the highest efficiency use, it's either 2.6 or 2.9 pH. So very, very acid. Then you have the highest efficiency use. And in Germany, they use these kind of principles, and they can have a 100% kill with glyphosate with only 0.7 liters per hectare.
But one of the things that fulvic acid is good for us here is our water has lots of carbonate.
Yeah.
Big particles.
Yeah.
So we don't have capacity to have an osmosis machine to or to stock all the rainwater to make our application.
Yeah.
So my question or my idea is if I add fulvic acid into my no matter what kind of pulverization that I'll make, that if that can help or break or helping
the carbon, the carbonates. Yeah. What I understand from John Kemp, but I think Andre is more specialist than I am, but that it's not going to help to get rid of the effect of the carbonates, but it might still lift up the efficiency of the chemical because of the easier uptake. But
it would be very expensive to do that. It's very expensive. You have to put a lot.
yeah.
And
So the best way is to collect rain.
Mas não entrar na folha.
Depois o herbicida vai ser mais eficiente.
To increase the efficiency of glyphosate.
Yeah, that's definitely working. That's what I do. Yeah.
Nós aqui temos a nossa água tem carbonatos. Por mais que tenha ácido cítrico.
Not for cork, not when it comes to the carbonates, right? Yeah, exactly.
We
No.
cannot break the carbonates with acid.
No, exactly.
Ou sulfuric acid,
Pois,
maybe, mas aqui neste caso.
And how about citric acid? Or?
Pode queimar as folhas. Exato.
Não, quer dizer, não sei.
Era preciso ali uma receita perfeita para não queimar.
It's dangerous to work with it.
Do que é que eu ouvi foi, tem duas formas, grandes duas formas. Ou fazes a osmose inversa, ou então fazes o esquema de enxofre. Sulfur burners for
heavy
acid, sulfuric acid from the sulfur.
Yeah.
And you can neutralize the carbonates in water.
Okay. Yeah. I have heard it, but I'm not a specialist.
For next month a year, you will see one.
Yeah. Well, but I do not have experience with it. I always collect rainwater, so and I would recommend to collect rainwater. But it's just the highest quality water you can get, and it's for free basically.
Make huge tanks, not huge, but or a tank.
But how much do you spray per hectare?
But if, for example, if we have now we have around 250 hectares. If we make 3 sprays crop for 300 liters.
But why would you spray with 300 liters?
Per hectare.
I spray with 150 liters.
For the foliar applications, you can use the inverse osmosis. It's easy.
Yeah.
The
machine working,
the machine working all the month around, all the year around, and reserve the water.
But then
For
I have
irrigation water, this is a problem. And for this you need the sulfur burner.
But for him also would be a big.
Yes, a big.
But why do you spray with so much water? Why not reducing your amount of water?
in the medicine herbicides, we make more. I'm making with drones we make 30 liters per hectare.
Yeah, works as well.
But with contact products, I really need to put more water. And sometimes to make nutrition, I have fear of high concentration, so we need to dilute
Dilute, yeah.
dilute more to not to burn the leaf.
Yeah.
As we are starting, for me, less water I use, it's better because the drone goes make more hectares per hour.
Yeah.
But as we are fear of to burn, we need to step by step.
Yeah, because of the high concentration. Yeah. Yeah.
But even my tractor is we will need 100,000 of liters at minimum per year.
Yeah, well, I spray almost everything with 150 liters per hectare, and it works just fine. I would even go down to 100 liters.
Everything that we have, you have rain when you are working.
No, I always spray in the evenings.
No, I'm saying you have rain in summer, so you have
Sometimes,
water
yeah.
to spray. Is why
Yeah,
I'm trying
yeah.
to say.
No, but water storage can be problematic for me as well. I only have 14 cubic meters, so not a whole lot. So, and I will expand it. But on the same time, I also try to kind of reduce the amount of sprays because in the beginning you're excited and it's all fun. But after a few years repeating it, you want to get rid of extra work. But
Can I give an idea? For people that have space, dig a pond,
yeah.
line it,
Yeah.
and put the water from the warehouse.
Yes, then you have algae.
No, come on.
Don't do you have algae, you have rabbits, dead mouses, you have
Okay, but it's not a problem. If you have rotten water, like, se a água estiver podre, não é problema. O que é problema é os bicarbonatos.
Yeah, you've mentioned before. I'm not so sure if that's right, but
Isso é básico.
I always have like 10 ABC containers.
Mas está tudo
I'm
podre.
like, then I
Yeah.
use them, and then I harvest again, and then I use them.
Mas
Yeah,
se ficar
yeah.
podre, não tem problema. O problema é os bicarbonatos.
Sim, este tem 22 mil litros, acho que
Não, isto não dá para nada. Tens de fazer um buraco, faz um buraco, metes tela e bota lá para dentro. Pois é, is it a problem if the water becomes rotten or with...
yeah, well,
Not so much as the bicarbonates, you know.
I don't dare to do something to say something about. I would definitely prefer to use a kind of fresh water by means of it not rotten, etc. Because I can imagine that it contains organisms that you are not really desired for.
Microorganisms, you can put some air,
Put a bit of
or you can
yam
get
or
some.
something.
Yes, true. I think
And
just
after neutralize the chloride with humic acids, for example.
yeah.
It's not difficult to handle.
No, that is true. But I think overall the rate.
Chemical things will be.
But it's all effort, you know, and it's repeated effort and also repeated costs. So I think just harvesting rainwater is just always, in all conditions, the best way, if possible. Yeah.
Here we have formals without water.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And you need more foliar applications, we don't have water.
No, but also your winters are not that, you don't have that many strong frosts, so I think you have the ability to store a lot of water over winter without having the risk of getting your tanks damaged by frost. So I think if there's a will, there's a way, but you have to figure something out that works for you. Or what he said, just make a. You can, for example, take spray water from your dams. You know, it works fine.
And the problem is with the erosion.
Yeah.
We have a lot of carbonates
Yeah.
the rainwater
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
soil.
Yeah, I harvest from the roof and try to store as much as possible, and then I do not filter it yet, but I will put a filter in between that the droppings from birds, etc., that I filter it out. And
Inverse osmosis, it's a cheap machine.
yeah,
And you can have a small one with 100 liters per hour,
yeah,
and we make them work all the
Constantly.
year round and forest
Yeah.
and
yeah,
it's,
definitely, yeah. No, there are different options, definitely,
You can
yeah.
also use the software before the Watner software
Yeah.
before
Yes, but apparently a softener is not going to take out the carbonates.
for the inverse osmosis.
Yeah. So to make that process more efficient, or
Yes.
okay, yeah.
Residues.
Yeah.
You can have one after the other.
Yeah.
Carbonates before, and also the filters for the inverse osmosis will be much more,
Yeah.
much less clean.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. You pre-filter it basically. Yeah. Yeah, well, for me, I'm just happy that I slowly start to get an understanding of all the mechanisms, but the whole foliar thing, it's a study at itself. It's just nutritional. But you can get really nice results, because these were my soybeans last year on the left, and these were my soybeans planted on the rows of the radish last year. And well, look at the leaves. You know, they're giant and they're shiny, and the results can be really, really good.
The building tells everything.
Yeah, exactly. So left were the soybeans from last year, and they looked really healthy, and they had a very nice and good bricks readings.
Yeah.
And then right, that was 2 years ago, the sunflowers, the ones that I planted on top of the stripped radish rows, and that was also quite a stunning result, actually. These leaf sizes and shininess is, yeah, I think it tells the story, basically. And then I'm also sometimes do the leaf sap analysis on the weeds, especially the docks or the rumex that I'm struggling with. And I found out that they are really high in chloride. And I do never use salt-based fertilizers. So now I start also spraying small amounts of salts, just in order to provide the plants with chloride, because on the leaf sap analysis as well, it might coincidentally, here you see it as well, the chloride levels they're okay-ish, but they're kind of low, generally in all my crops. So now I just start to apply a little bit of salts, like half a kilogram per hectare sometimes, just to provide chloride for my crop, as well as bully the rumex, at least is what I'm trying, basically, because I guess, or I hope that the rumex is there to kind of bring chloride, because this is the only element that really jumps out when it...
So maybe it's why that I have, because I make sap analysis of my wet here, near here, and I have chloride. I think the first time I thought it was an error of mine making the samples. Maybe in the kitchen at home I use something that has salt, but the second analysis, the same problem.
Really high, or?
No, the all greenish.
But not chloride, sodium.
No, era chloride.
Acho que é sódio. Mas it's the same idea.
But all green by means of very high or very low?
Very high, very high.
Yeah.
The question is in two fields, but I never make fertilizer on those fields.
Yeah.
And maybe it was the weeds that were before that bring that.
Yes, but I think also, especially when you work conventional and you use salt-based fertilizers, or maybe if you irrigate, no irrigation. Yeah, okay. Well, there are.
Igual aqui na vídeo também, os análises de solo já dão sódio altíssimo. Acho que é da terra. Sódio. No caso é sódio, ele diz que é cloro, mas acho que é.
But also, for example, bare soil, it will evaporate water and bring salt up. So there are different mechanisms that when it comes to salt. So.
But for adding chloride, what are you using?
Just kitchen salt.
Salt, sea salt.
Yeah, well, currently I have a big bag of kitchen salt with a little bit of iodine in it. But now, the next time I will use sea salt, because it contains much elements.
20 kilos per hectare in our soup with micronutrients. 25 kilos of salt.
So much? Yeah.
For all the minerals, all the trace elements, the sea salt has everything.
Yeah. A lot of people and a lot of specialists recommend to just spray seawater. Take water from the sea, spray it on your field.
It's too long.
Yeah, but if you, for example, if you have many hectares, you just send a truck there, bring 25 cubic meter of seawater and spray it. The Celtic sea salt or the standard sea salt?
Standard sea salt.
Yeah.
For agriculture, they are 25
Kilogram bags. Yeah.
And big results.
Yeah. And with a fertilizer spreader, or how do you spread it?
We deal with the roots in the water.
Oh yeah, and then spray it.
Yes, and with some other trace trace elements that we need are missing in the soil,
Yeah.
as boron, as molybdenum, as cobalt, as selenium, and we spray. We drip the water in all the areas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when do you do it for the new crop or in the cover crop, or what's the timing?
Autumn, always before the rains.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And you don't get any burning effect if water touches the plants, or?
No,
It's before the plant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's on.
we, in the pastures, for example, with the cows graze the crop, and after we can use with very a small dilution, yes, 25 kilos of salt for 10,000 liters of water, for
Yeah.
example. Okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For sure, you don't have any problem with that.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
And then just with the manure spreader, basically, or whatever.
Yes, with the dropper, with water.
Yeah.
Dropper,
It's a sprayer.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Just a stand. Okay, yeah, 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 yeah.
But how many liters per hectare?
10.
10?
10,000. Yeah, yeah. But with a normal sprayer.
No, not a full sprayer.
The manure spread, the manure tank.
Liquid manure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. The manure tank. Yeah, exactly. The liquid manure tank. Yeah, yeah.
We make.
Yeah, with this plate and it spreads. Yeah, 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 yeah.
We make 12 lines for 12
Yeah.
meters.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, at least I think it's the way to go to overcome weeds and just balancing nutrients and also so this is only the chemical approach, of course, but also the physical approach, and yeah. I put this in, but I think it's a bit unnecessary to say here that when you start changing and going towards a regenerative path, that it takes a bit of extra energy in the beginning to get used to everything, and also the social pressure, etc. So I think I can skip this one.
No,
And
this is very important.
It's a very
You can
Yeah.
see for this audience, but this is a very.
Yeah, yeah, that's why I think I can skip it now. But generally,
very
And usually people quit. Usually we say 2 years until you start seeing the difficulty coming down. And at the 2-year mark is usually where people actually stop or think it's a mistake and go back to conventional.
yeah, yeah,
Because it's the 2-year mark, and then everything starts getting easier on the 3rd year, and usually people quit on the 2nd, so it's so close. But
yeah, yeah. Well, but as well the social pressure. Almost everyone is sensitive for social pressure, for what will my neighbor think, or what is someone going to think when he drives by and he sees this mess, for example. Or well, not everything is always a success. I think it's really, it's also from Rick Clark, this organic no-tiller from America. He says, well, you know, if you learn a child to drive the bicycle, you're not going to teach him to drive the bicycle by saying, you better don't drive it, you might drop. You know, you encourage it. So you have to find people around you that encourage it, and if they do not encourage it, you just, you keep distance. You don't have to ignore them, but you might keep little bit more distance. I think, and by having study groups together and to really learn to observe, which I still have difficulties with. I find observing very difficult. I still remember the first time I showed one of my experiments to my father. He was a conventional farmer, and I had the soybeans in the rye, and it was weedy, it was not successful. And I looked at it as, oh, well, if I change this and if I update or upgrade that a little bit and do this different, then it might become a success. And he saw a mess and said, well, it's a complete failure. You know, and people are sensitive for this. So his response was you know, and yeah, it's a bit painful actually, but you can imagine, well, coming from his context, it's completely okay, and I understood it, but just want to say it's really important that you have people around you that help you to see the things and to push you in the right direction instead of seeing only failures. Yeah, and you just have to start, basically, you know, just start. yeah, well, that's it. That's the presentation. So this is the end.
Well, usually they say there's no failures, there's only experience.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of the thing. It's like
A failure is an unexpected outcome.
Yeah.
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 Yeah.